The rain was falling, not the gentle kind that whispers promises of spring. This was October rain, cold, relentless, the kind that soaked through your coat and into your bones, reminding you that winter was coming and you weren't ready for it. Serafina Bancroft stood on the edge of a widow's walk, 50 feet above the churning Atlantic Ocean. Her shoulders screamed in agony. Her fingers white-knuckled and trembling gripped a tiny ankle. Below her, suspended in the darkness, a 2-year-old child with golden curls dangled over the void. "I've got you," Sarah whispered, though she wasn't sure if the words were for the child or for herself. "I've got you, baby. Mama's got you." The little girl's eyes, wide and terrified, locked onto hers. Those eyes, brown as autumn leaves, familiar in a way that made Sarah's chest ache with recognition she couldn't explain. "Mama," the child whimpered. Just that one word, but it was enough to make Sarah hold on even as her grip began to slip. The wind howled, the rain stung like needles, and somewhere behind her a man was screaming her name. But all Sarah could think was, how did I get here 3 weeks earlier? The Gilded Rose sat like a jewel box in the heart of Manhattan's Upper East Side. From the outside, it looked like every other tasteful brownstone on the tree-lined street. Understated elegance, old money whispers. But inside, beneath the crystal chandeliers and behind the velvet curtains, deals were made that would never see the light of day. Marriages were arranged over bottles of wine that cost more than most people's monthly rent. And occasionally, careers ended with nothing more than a quiet conversation and a handshake. Serafina Bancroft had been working at the Gilded Rose for exactly 21 days. 3 weeks of watching people who would never notice her spend money she would never have. 3 weeks of perfecting her invisible smile. The kind that said, "I am here to serve you, not to exist in your world." She was good at being invisible. She'd had a lifetime of practice. The kitchen was chaos that Tuesday evening. Marco, the floor manager, paced like a caged animal, sweat beading on his forehead despite the October chills that seeped through the old building's bones. He grabbed Sarah's arm as she reached for a tray of sparkling water glasses. "Table 4, he hissed. His grip was tight enough to bruise. "Do not make eye contact unless spoken to. Do not ask questions. Do not breathe too loud." "Understood." Sarah pulled her arm free, rubbing the red marks his fingers had left. She'd had worse. The bruises from the children's home still lived somewhere deep in her muscle memory. Phantom aches that flared up when someone grabbed her too hard. "Who is it?" she asked, adjusting her apron. "The mayor." Marco's face went the color of old paper. "Worse, Dante Moretti." The kitchen fell silent. Even the sous chef stopped chopping. The dishwasher turned off the water. Everyone in New York knew that name. You didn't have to be involved in the life to know what it meant. Moretti, the shadow over the city, the ghost in the machine. Sarah felt her pulse quicken, but she kept her face calm. Fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. Fear didn't pay the medical bills that arrived every week like clockwork. Fear didn't keep her sister alive. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She pulled it out, glancing at the screen. A text from Ivy. "Bad day. Couldn't get out of bed. Doctor says we need to move faster on the transplant." "How's the second job going?" Sarah's throat tightened. She typed back quickly. "Good tips tonight. We'll figure it out. I promise." She was lying. The tips weren't good. They were never good enough. Not for what they needed. $200,000. That's what the heart transplant cost. The one that would save Ivy's life, her baby sister. 23 years old and dying from the same congenital heart defect that had killed their father. Sarah had $47,000 saved. She'd been working 3 jobs for 2 years. Waitressing, cleaning offices at night, weekend shifts at a coffee shop. It still wasn't enough. It would never be enough. The surrogacy 2 years ago was supposed to help. $50,000 for carrying a stranger's baby. It should have been simple, 9 months of discomfort in exchange for hope. But nothing in Sarah's life had ever been simple. "I'll take the table," she said quietly. Marco looked at her like she'd volunteered for a firing squad. Maybe she had. She walked out onto the floor. The usual hum of conversation had dropped to an uneasy murmur. The other diners, people who thought themselves powerful, suddenly looked very small. They knew who had just walked in. They knew what it meant. Table 4, the best seat in the house, secluded with a view of the entrance but hidden from the street. The kind of table where you could see everyone but no one could see you unless you wanted them to. The man sitting there looked like he'd been carved from marble. 32 years old according to the whispers. But his eyes were ancient, dark, the kind of eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Sarah made in 6 months. His hair was dark, touched with silver at the temples. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, a thin white line that somehow made him more beautiful rather than less. But it wasn't the man that caught Sarah's attention. It was the child. She sat in a high chair beside him, tiny hands folded in her lap. 2 years old maybe, golden curls that caught the candlelight, brown eyes too old for her face. She clutched a worn velvet rabbit, its fur matted from being loved too hard for too long. The little girl was perfectly still, silent, watching the room with those solemn eyes. Sarah felt something twist in her chest, a phantom pain, the kind that had no name but lived in the spaces between heartbeats. She approached the table, water pitcher in hand. Her hands were steady. That was good. She'd practiced this, practiced being nothing, nobody, just another server in a city full of people no one remembered. "Good evening, sir," she said. Her voice was calm, professional, empty, still or sparkling. Dante Moretti didn't look up from the menu. Sparkling, and warm milk for the girl, not hot, warm. Of course. As Sarah reached over to pour the water into his crystal glass, her wrist brushed the edge of the table. The movement released a faint scent from her skin. Vanilla soap, lavender lotion, the cheap kind she bought at the drugstore on the corner, the only luxury she allowed herself. The man went rigid. He looked up, and for the first time their eyes met. The impact was physical, like touching a live wire, like falling. Sarah felt her breath catch, felt something ancient and terrifying wake up in the back of her mind. For just a second, she saw something flash across his face. Recognition, pain, but it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by cold indifference. "Be quick," he said. His voice was ice over gravel. Sarah nodded. She turned to the child, forcing warmth into her voice despite the hammering of her heart. "And for you, little one," she whispered, bending slightly so she was at eye level with the girl, "what would you like?" The child lifted her head slowly. When their eyes met, the world stopped. Sarah felt it. A jolt of electricity, a sense of wrongness and rightness all tangled together. Something in her chest cracked open. Something she'd locked away 2 years ago and sworn never to touch again. The little girl dropped her velvet rabbit. It hit the floor with a soft thud that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. The child's mouth opened. Her bottom lip trembled. Tears began to pool in those brown eyes, spilling over, running down her round cheeks. Dante Moretti leaned forward immediately, his cold mask cracking. "Aria, tesoro, what is it? Are you hurt?" But the little girl ignored her father. She reached out with both small hands, grasping at Sarah's apron strings. Her fingers clutched the fabric like she was drowning and Sarah was the only solid thing in the world. Then it happened. The sound was rusty, small, broken, like a door that hadn't been opened in years. "Ma!" Sarah froze. The water pitcher trembled in her hand. Dante Moretti went completely still. "Ma! Ma!" The word was louder this time, clearer. The little girl Aria was crying now, reaching, straining against the high chair straps. Her face was red with the effort of making sounds she'd never made before. "Mama, mama, mama." The entire restaurant went silent. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the kitchen sounds faded away. Sarah stood frozen. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. That word, that impossible word, it unlocked something in her. Something buried so deep she'd convinced herself it was dead. 2 years ago, a white room, a beeping monitor, pain that felt like dying, and then nothing. Numbness. A doctor with cold hands and colder words. I'm sorry, the baby didn't make it, stillborn. It's better if you don't see her. Better if you let go. She'd let go, she'd taken the money, she'd flown back to New York and paid for her father's funeral and tried to forget. But the body remembers what the mind tries to bury. Dante Moretti stood up. His chair scraped against the floor with a sound like a scream. He was tall, imposing, radiating a dangerous energy that made the security guards at the door step forward, hands moving to their holsters. He looked at his daughter, who was screaming now, wailing with a desperation that tore at something primal. Then he looked at Sarah. His face was a mask of confusion and rising fury. Who are you? His voice was low, deadly, a promise of violence wrapped in silk. Who sent you? Nobody, Sarah stammered. She stepped back, clutching the water pitcher to her chest like a shield. I'm just a waitress, I swear. I've never met you before. I don't know what's happening. My daughter, Dante said, moving around the table. Each step was deliberate, predatory. My daughter hasn't spoken a single word in her entire life. She doesn't speak, she doesn't cry. And tonight she looks at you and calls you mother. He grabbed Sarah's wrist. His grip was iron. He pulled her arm up into the light, examining the inside of her forearm, looking for something. A tattoo, a mark, proof of deception. Let me go, Sarah cried out. Daddy, no, Arya screamed, a full sentence, clear as crystal. Daddy, no hurt, mama. The staff was frozen. Marco was dialing something on his phone under the host stand, but one of Dante's guards simply shook his head. No police, not here, not ever. Dante stared at Sarah, really looked at her green eyes with flecks of gold, at the shape of her jaw, at the curve of her nose. Then he looked back at Arya. The resemblance was faint, buried under baby fat and different hair colors. But it was there, in the eyes, in the way they both tilted their heads when they were thinking. But that was impossible. Catherine, his wife, the woman who had given birth to Arya, she was the dead, had been dead for 2 years. He'd seen the body. He'd buried her in the family plot in Geneva. Unless everything had been a lie. Dante released Sarah's wrist, but he didn't step back. He signaled to his head of security, a massive man who looked like he could break concrete with his bare hands. Clear the restaurant, Dante ordered. His eyes never left Sarah's face. Boss, the guard started. Everyone out, Dante roared. He swept a wine glass off the table. It shattered against the wall with a sound like a gunshot. Panic erupted. Patrons grabbed their coats and scrambled for the exits. Marco ushered the staff into the kitchen. Within 90 seconds, the Gilded Rose was empty except for Dante, his guards, his sobbing daughter, and a terrified Serafina Bancroft. Dante picked up Arya, soothing her instantly. She buried her face in his neck, still reaching back over his shoulder toward Sarah. Her small hand opened and closed, grasping at air. Mama, she whimpered. Want mama. Dante turned to Sarah. His voice dropped to a terrifying calm, the kind of calm that comes before something breaks. You aren't going home tonight. He glanced at her name tag. Serafina. You can't do this. This is kidnapping. Call it what you want, Dante said, wiping a tear from Arya's cheek with surprising gentleness. But until I find out why my daughter thinks you are the woman I buried 2 years ago, you belong to me. He nodded to the guard. Bring the car around. We're going to the estate. As the guard moved toward her, Sarah felt a sudden sharp memory pierce through her mind. A cold room, a beeping monitor, a man's voice, muffled, speaking to someone else. Take the child before she wakes up. She can't know. The Morettis paid for silence. The memory was so strong she almost fainted. As a black hood was placed over her head, her last coherent thought wasn't fear for herself. It was the realization that the little girl's scream had unlocked a door in her mind she hadn't known was locked. She didn't know who Dante Moretti was, not really. But she knew with absolute certainty that she knew that baby. The drive to the Moretti estate took 45 minutes. It felt like hours. Sarah sat in the back of a bulletproof Mercedes SUV squeezed between two guards who smelled like gun oil and expensive cologne. The hood was still over her head. She could hear the rain hammering against the windows, could feel every turn, every acceleration, every sudden stop. In the front seat, Dante held Arya. The little girl had finally fallen asleep, her breathing soft and even. But every time the car hit a bump, she would stir and whimper, "Ma." And every time Sarah felt Dante's eyes in the rearview mirror, cold, calculating, trying to solve an equation that didn't make sense. When the car finally stopped, Sarah heard gates opening, electronic, heavy, the kind that said, "You're not leaving unless we let you." The hood was removed. She blinked in the sudden light of the circular driveway. The estate was massive, a sprawling mansion that looked like it had been transplanted from the Italian countryside and dropped onto the cliffs of Long Island. Marble columns, manicured gardens, and beyond it, the dark Atlantic Ocean churning under the storm. To anyone else, it would have looked like a palace. To Sarah, it looked like a prison. She wasn't taken to a dungeon. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she was marched up a grand marble staircase and into a guest bedroom that was larger than her entire apartment. 4-poster bed, silk sheets, a bathroom with heated floors, and a shower big enough for 3 people. "Stay." The head of security grunted. His name tag said James. He was 50 maybe, gray at the temples, eyes like chips of stone. "Don't try the windows. The dogs patrol the grounds at night. They aren't friendly." The heavy oak door clicked shut. The lock turned. Sarah sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands shaking. She pulled up her sleeve, tracing the faint, almost invisible scar on the inside of her elbow. The place where IVs had been inserted, where blood had been drawn, where her body had been turned into a vessel for someone else's dream. The memory she'd been suppressing for 2 years was clawing its way out now, demanding to be seen. Geneva, the Genesis Life Clinic. October 2 years ago. She'd been 23, desperate. Her father had just died of a heart attack 6 months earlier, leaving behind medical bills that would take decades to pay off. But that wasn't the worst of it. Ivy, her baby sister, 21 years old and brilliant and full of life. She'd been diagnosed with the same congenital heart defect that had killed their father. The doctors gave her 3 years at most. The surgery to fix it, a full heart transplant, cost $200,000. Insurance called it experimental. Sarah called it Ivy's only chance to live. The ad for surrogates had seemed like a gift from God. Help a couple achieve their dream of parenthood. $50,000 plus all medical expenses. Healthy women, ages 21 to 35. $50,000. It wasn't enough for the full surgery, but it was a start. It was hope. Sarah could work for the rest. 3 more years of double shifts. Maybe another surrogacy if her body could handle it. She'd do anything to save Ivy, even carry a stranger's child. She'd flown to Geneva, met with Dr. Ashford Grayson, a man with silver hair and rimless glasses who spoke in a voice like silk over razors. He'd explained the process. In vitro fertilization, the embryo would be created from the intended parent's genetic material. Sarah would simply carry the baby to term. It was a gift, an act of love. She'd signed the contract without reading all the fine print. She'd needed the money too badly to ask questions. The pregnancy had been difficult. Morning sickness that lasted all day, back pain, swollen ankles. But every time she felt the baby kick, she'd whispered promises to the tiny life inside her. "You're going to be loved. You're going to have everything I never had. Parents who chose you. A home that's safe." And when the baby was born, Ivy would get her surgery. Her sister would live. That made every moment of pain worth it. Then, October 14th, labor came early, fast. The pain was indescribable. She remembered screaming, remembered hands holding her down, remembered Dr. Grayson's cold voice. "She's hemorrhaging. Sedate her. Now." When she woke up, the room was empty, quiet. The beeping of the monitor was the only sound. Dr. Grayson had been standing at the foot of her bed. His face was professionally sympathetic, the kind of sympathy that came from practice, not feeling. "I'm sorry, Miss Bancroft. There were complications during delivery. The baby, she didn't make it, stillborn. These things happen sometimes despite our best efforts." Sarah had felt something inside her shatter. "I want to see her. Please, let me hold her." "That's not advisable. It's better if you don't attach. Better if you let go and move forward." "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "Just once. I need to say goodbye." But Dr. Grayson had been firm, unnaturally firm. "Miss Bancroft, you signed a contract. The intended parents do not wish for you to have contact with the child, or in this case, the remains. It's in the agreement. Now we'll process your payment and arrange your flight home. I suggest you take time to grieve and heal." She'd been given an envelope with $50,000 in cash, a plane ticket, and a non-disclosure agreement that threatened legal action if she ever spoke about the surrogacy. She'd flown home in a daze, used the money to pay off her father's funeral costs, and put a down payment on Ivy's treatment. It wasn't enough for the transplant, not even close, but it bought time, medications, tests, hope measured in months instead of weeks. Sarah had tried to convince herself that it had been worth it, that the baby she'd never held had given Ivy a chance. But late at night, when she couldn't sleep, she would dream of golden curls and brown eyes, a daughter with no name, a ghost that lived in the spaces between her heartbeats. The door opened suddenly. Sarah jumped up. Dante Moretti stood there. He'd removed his jacket and tie. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a tattoo of a cross over his heart. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were sharp, alert, dangerous. He held a glass of whiskey in one hand and a manila folder in the other. "Drink," he said, placing the whiskey on the nightstand. "I don't drink," Sarah said. Her voice was steadier than she felt. "I want to go home." "You are home," Dante said. His voice was dark, final. "Or rather, you are in the home of the child you claim is yours. Sit down." He didn't yell. His quiet intensity was far more terrifying than any amount of shouting could have been. Sarah sat. Dante opened the folder. "I ran a background check on you. Serafina Bancroft, 25 years old, born in Ohio, moved to New York 3 years ago, dropped out of art school after your father died, worked as a barista, a receptionist, and now a waitress. Clean record. Student loans you're paying off slowly but steadily." He looked up, his eyes bored into hers. "On paper, you don't exist in my world. You have no connection to the Moretti family. You have no connection to my late wife, Catherine. So explain to me why my daughter, who has never spoken a word in her life, looked at you and called you mother." Sarah's throat was dry. She reached for the whiskey without thinking, took a sip. It burned going down, but it steadied her nerves. "I don't know who Catherine is," she said quietly. "She was Arya's mother," Dante said. He was watching her face like a predator watches prey, looking for the lie, the crack in the armor. She died giving birth to Arya in a private clinic in Geneva, October 14th, 2 years ago. The glass slipped from Sarah's hand. It hit the carpet with a dull thud, whiskey spreading like blood. "October 14th, she whispered. Dante's eyes narrowed. "Does that date mean something to you?" "That's the day I gave birth." The air in the room seemed to vanish. Dante set the folder down slowly, very slowly. "Explain. Now." Sarah began to cry. The tears were hot and fast, 2 years of grief pouring out in a flood she couldn't control. "I was a surrogate," she said. The words came in broken gasps. "I was 23. My father had just died 6 months before. But that wasn't why I did it. It was for my sister, Ivy. She has the same heart defect that killed our father. She needs a transplant. $200,000. I've been working 3 jobs for 2 years and I still only have $47,000 saved." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "The surrogacy paid $50,000. It was supposed to be the first step. Enough to buy time, medications, tests. I thought if I could just get enough for the down payment, we could finance the rest. But then," Her voice broke. But then Dante prompted. His voice had changed. The edge of fury was still there. But underneath it was something else. Something that might have been understanding. They flew me to Geneva, Sarah continued. Genesis Life Clinic. They implanted the embryo. I carried the baby for 9 months. I never met the parents. It was a closed contract, anonymous. Then on October 14th, I went into labor. They sedated me heavily. When I woke up, she couldn't finish. When you woke up, Dante asked softly. Dr. Grayson told me there were complications. He said the baby was stillborn. A girl. He said it was better if I didn't see her. Better if I didn't attach. He gave me the money and a ticket home the next day. Sarah looked up at Dante, tears streaming down her face. I've been mourning her for 2 years. I named her in my head. Rose. I thought she was dead. I used the money to keep my sister alive a little longer. Every month I send money to the hospital. Every month they tell me Ivy's getting worse. And every night I dream about the baby I never held. Dante stood up and walked to the window. He stared out at the dark ocean, his reflection ghostly in the glass. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. Dr. Ashford Grayson, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Tall, silver hair, rimless glasses, voice like he's always talking down to you. Yes. Sarah stood up, her legs shaky. You know him. He was Catherine's obstetrician. He delivered Aria. The pieces were falling into place. Terrible pieces. A puzzle made of lies. Dante turned back to her. My wife told me that she was pregnant, but she spent most of the pregnancy in Europe, shopping for the nursery, she said, getting away from the stress of New York. I was busy. There was a war with the rival family. The Russians were moving into our territory. I didn't visit her as often as I should have. He walked to a safe built into the wall, punched in a code and pulled out a tablet. He swiped through photos until he found what he was looking for. Then he turned the screen towards Sarah. It was a photo of a baby, maybe a few weeks old, golden curls, brown eyes, and there on her left shoulder a small birthmark, strawberry-shaped, distinctive. Arya has a birthmark, Dante said quietly. Right here. He pointed to that spot on the photo. Catherine said it was a family trait. Her mother had one, her grandmother. Sarah's breath caught. When I was in labor just before they sedated me, I saw the baby for a split second. Just a flash. She had a birthmark on her shoulder, strawberry-shaped. I thought I was imagining it because of the pain. But I wasn't. Was I? Dante's jaw was tight. No, you weren't. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Get Dr. Grayson to the estate. Now. I don't care if he's in surgery. I don't care if he's with the president. Tell him Arya is sick. Tell him to bring a full medical kit. And bring me a DNA collection kit from the lab. He hung up, turned back to Sarah. The hatred in his eyes was gone, replaced by something worse, cold calculation. We are going to find out the truth tonight, Serafina. If the DNA shows that you are Arya's biological mother, then we have a very serious problem. What kind of problem? Sarah whispered. The kind where people die. It was 2 in the morning. The storm had intensified, rain lashing against the windows like it was trying to get in. Sarah sat in Dante's study, a room that smelled of leather and old paper and gun oil. The walls were lined with mahogany bookshelves, old editions of Dante's Inferno, The Prince, The Art of War, books about power and violence and how to hold on to both. Dante sat behind his massive oak desk. Between them lay 2 cotton swabs sealed in plastic tubes, the DNA samples. Doctor. Grayson hadn't arrived yet. He was flying in from Boston. That gave them 3 hours, maybe less. I have a private lab in the basement, Dante said, breaking the silence. Used for verifying identities in my line of work. My technician is running the samples now. We'll know in an hour. Sarah stared at her hands. They wouldn't stop shaking. What happens if she's mine? Dante poured himself another drink. Whiskey. Neat. He downed it in one swallow. Then we have a very complicated situation because legally, Arya is Arya Moretti, sole heir to my estate, my daughter. If the DNA shows that you are her biological mother, it means my wife lied to me. It means a doctor committed fraud. It means you are the mother of the daughter of the most powerful man in New York. He leaned forward. The lamplight cast shadows across his face, making him look older, harder. Do you have any idea how dangerous that makes you? I don't care about danger, Sarah said. Her chin lifted. There was steel in her voice now, the kind that came from surviving things that should have broken her. I care about my daughter. You said she hasn't spoken in 2 years. That's trauma, Mr. Moretti. That's a child who knows deep down that she isn't where she belongs. Dante flinched. Because she was right. He'd hired the best nannies, the best child psychologists, the best speech therapists. Nothing had worked. Arya was a ghost in her own home. Silent, distant, locked behind a wall no one could breach. Until tonight. Until a waitress with vanilla-scented skin had walked into her life and unlocked something primal, something that defied logic. And your sister? Dante asked suddenly. Ivy, how long does she have? Sarah's eyes filled with fresh tears. The doctors say 6 months, maybe a year if we can afford the medications. But without the transplant, she shook her head. I'm running out of time. I'm running out of money. I'm running out of hope. Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a checkbook. He wrote something, tore off the check, and slid it across the desk. Sarah looked down. Her hands started trembling so badly she could barely read it. $200,000. What is this? She whispered. The surgery for your sister. Whatever's left over you keep. I can't. You can, you will. Dante's voice was firm. If Arya is your daughter, then you are family, and family takes care of family. Even if you're not, you saved a man's daughter tonight from whatever nightmare she was trapped in. You gave her a voice. That's worth more than money. Sarah stared at the check. At the number that meant life. That meant Ivy would see her 24th birthday, her 25th, maybe get married, maybe have children. Why? She asked. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Then because I understand what it's like to love someone so much, you'd do anything to save them, Dante said quietly. I would burn this city to the ground for Arya. You were willing to destroy your body, carry a stranger's child and live with grief for 2 years for Ivy. We're not so different, you and I. Suddenly, the study door creaked open. A small figure stood there in a silk nightgown. Golden curls wild from sleep, clutching the velvet rabbit. Arya. She must have escaped from the nursery. The nanny had probably fallen asleep. Dante started to stand. Arya Tesoro, go back to bed. But Arya wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were locked on Sarah. She walked slowly across the room, her bare feet silent on the Persian rug. She walked right past her father and stopped at Sarah's chair. Sarah held her breath. Slowly, carefully, she lowered her hand, palm up. An invitation, not a demand. Arya hesitated. 2 years of silence. 2 years of walls. 2 years of feeling wrong in her own skin. Then, she placed her small hand in Sarah's. The contact was electric. Arya let out a long, shuddering sigh, like she'd been holding her breath for her entire life and could finally exhale. She climbed up onto Sarah's lap, curled into a ball and closed her eyes. Mama, she whispered, so soft it was almost inaudible. Mama here. Dante watched, frozen. He'd never seen Arya initiate physical contact like that. She usually flinched when people touched her, screamed when strangers came too close. But with Sarah she melted, like she'd finally come home. The intercom on Dante's desk buzzed. It was the lab technician. His voice was nervous, shaky. Boss? Dante pressed the button. He didn't take his eyes off Sarah and Arya. Go ahead. I ran the markers 3 times, just to be absolutely certain. And it's a match, boss. The technician's voice was barely audible. Probability of maternity is 99.9999%. The woman is the biological mother. Dante closed his eyes. The truth hit him like a physical blow. His wife Catherine had been desperate. She'd known he wanted an heir, known their marriage and the alliance between the Moretti and Castellano families depended on producing children. When she discovered she was infertile, she hadn't told him, couldn't tell him. the shame, the fear, the certainty that he would leave her. So she'd hired a surrogate, used Dante's genetic material without his knowledge. And when her own eggs failed, when the embryos wouldn't take, she'd authorized the clinic to use the surrogate's eggs instead, planning to pay everyone off, planning to take the secret to her grave. But Catherine had died before she could complete the deception, hemorrhaged during delivery. An embolism, the doctor said. And Dr. Grayson, seeing an opportunity, had cleaned up the mess. He'd gotten rid of the surrogate by telling her the baby was dead. And he'd handed the newborn to the grieving mafia boss, likely charging the Moretti accounts a fortune for neonatal care over the years. The perfect crime, except for one thing. The baby had remembered. Dante looked at Sarah. She was rocking Arya, humming a lullaby. Tears streamed down her face, dripping onto Arya's golden curls. "She's mine," Sarah whispered. "She's really mine." "Yes," Dante said. His voice was rough with emotion he hadn't felt in years. The test confirmed it. Sarah buried her face in Arya's hair, sobbing with relief. "Oh God, oh my baby girl." "But," Dante said, standing up, his shadow fell across them. "That doesn't mean you can leave." Sarah looked up. Hope and fear warred in her eyes. "What Dr. Grayson is on his way here," Dante said, checking his watch. "He'll arrive in about 2 hours. When he gets here, he'll expect to see a sick child and a grieving father. If he sees you, he'll know the truth is out. He might have leverage, files, accomplices, ways to hurt us." Dante walked around the desk and knelt beside Sarah's chair. For the first time, he was at eye level with her. The scent of vanilla and lavender hit him again. Intoxicating, familiar in a way that made no sense. "You're going to help me, Serafina," he said. "You want your daughter back, then you need to help me destroy the man who stole her." "How?" Sarah asked, holding Arya tighter. "You're going to hide in the adjoining room. You're going to listen, and when I give the signal, you're going to walk out. I want to see the look on his face when the ghost of the woman he deceived returns from the dead." "And after that?" Sarah asked. Her voice was steady now, strong. "Do I get to take her home?" "Wait." Dante looked at Arya sleeping peacefully in Sarah's arms. Then he looked at Sarah's fierce protective face. He realized with a jolt that he didn't want them to leave. Didn't want to lose this, whatever this was. After that, Dante said, standing and buttoning his shirt, "We discussed the terms of your custody because you are the mother of a Moretti, and Morettis don't live in studio apartments in Queens." The sound of a helicopter approaching cut through the storm. "He's here," Dante said. "Get in the closet, leave the door cracked, and whatever happens, do not make a sound until I say Arya's full name. Arya Catherine Moretti. That's your cue." Sarah stood carefully transferring the sleeping child to Dante. Arya stirred, whimpered, "Mama," but settled when Dante whispered reassurances. Sarah walked to the adjoining room. Before she closed the door, she looked back at Dante. "If he tries to hurt her again," she said quietly, "I don't care what code you live by, I will kill him myself." Dante smiled. It was a predator's smile, sharp and cold. "Get in line, Serafina. Get in line." The helicopter landed on the front lawn. Through the rain-streaked windows, they could see a figure in a cashmere coat running toward the house. Dr. Ashford Grayson had arrived, and he had no idea he was walking into a trap. Dr. Ashford Grayson entered the study like he owned it. Cashmere coat dripping rain, silver hair perfectly styled despite the helicopter ride, rimless glasses catching the lamplight. He carried a black medical bag that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Dante," he said, setting the bag down on a leather ottoman. His voice was smooth, practiced, the voice of a man who'd spent decades telling people exactly what they wanted to hear. "I came as quickly as I could. The weather is absolutely dreadful. James said Arya is ill, a fever." Dante didn't stand. He sat behind his massive oak desk, methodically cleaning his gun. The slide moved back and forth with a rhythmic click-shuck that echoed in the silent room. Click-shuck, click-shuck. "She's fine, Ashford," Dante said without looking up. Grayson paused. His hand hovered over the medical bag. I don't understand. Your head of security said it was an emergency. It is an emergency, Dante said, finally lifting his eyes. They were dead things, empty, the kind of eyes that had watched men beg for their lives and felt nothing. Just not a medical one. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sit down, Dante commanded. Grayson hesitated. A flicker of unease crossed his face there and gone like a shadow. He sat in the wingback chair opposite the desk, crossing his legs with forced casualness. You seem tense, Dante. Is this about the Castellano territory dispute? You know I prefer not to be involved in the business side of things. This is family business, Dante said. He reached into his drawer and pulled out the 2 plastic tubes. The DNA swabs, he tossed them onto the desk. They clattered loudly in the silence. Grayson stared at them. His face went rigid. The color drained from his cheeks, leaving him looking like a wax figure under the lamplight. What is this? His voice was an octave higher than normal. I had a guest tonight, Dante said. His tone was deceptively light, conversational, the way you might discuss the weather before a storm. A waitress, she had a very interesting reaction to Arya. And Arya, well, she spoke for the first time in her life. Grayson's Adam's apple bobbed. Trauma response. The child is projecting. It's common in selective mutism cases. She sees a female figure and attaches the maternal label she's been missing. I've seen it dozens of times. That's what I thought, Dante nodded. So I tested them, just to be sure. He leaned forward. The gun rested near his hand, close enough to reach. Why does a waitress from Queens share 99.9999% of her genetic markers with my daughter Ashford? Grayson opened his mouth. No sound came out. He licked his lips. Tried again. Dante, listen to me. The medical procedures involved in surrogacy are complex. There can be anomalies in the... Anomalies. Dante's voice was a roar that shook the bookshelves. He slammed his hand on the desk. The gun jumped. You told me Catherine died of an embolism. You told me the child was hers. You told that girl her baby died. I did what I was paid to do, Grayson snapped. His composure was cracking like ice under pressure. He stood up, backing toward the door. Catherine begged me. She was desperate. Her eggs weren't viable, but her uterus was scarred from endometriosis. We tried the surrogate with her eggs, but the embryos wouldn't stick. We were running out of time. Catherine said you would leave her if she couldn't give you an heir. So you stole a child. I saved a legacy. Grayson's voice rose defensive, desperate, sweat beading on his forehead. We used the surrogate's egg with your genetic material. It was a biological necessity. When Catherine died on the table, he choked. When she hemorrhaged out, I panicked. I had a dead wife and a child that wasn't hers. If I told you the truth that the baby wasn't Catherine's, you would have rejected it. You would have killed me for the deception. So you cleaned it up, Dante said quietly. Too quietly. Yes, I told the surrogate the baby was stillborn. I showed her a body. Another stillborn from the hospital. I gave her the money and sent her away. Then I gave you a daughter. Everyone won. Everyone won. Dante repeated the words like they were poison in his mouth. Except the mother who has been grieving a ghost for 2 years. Except the sister who's dying because the money wasn't enough for her surgery. He looked toward the closet door, the signal. Serafina. The door opened. Sarah Bancroft stepped out. She was still wearing her waitress uniform, stained with rain and tears, but she looked like an avenging angel. Fierce. Beautiful in the way fire is beautiful. Dangerous and bright and impossible to look away from. She held Arya's velvet rabbit in her hands, twisting it so tight her knuckles were white. Grayson looked at her like he was seeing a phantom. His face went from pale to gray. You told me she was dead, Sarah whispered. She walked toward him slowly. Each step was deliberate, measured, the kind of walk that says, I've been waiting for this moment. I asked to hold her. I begged you, and you told me to let go while you handed my baby to him. It was a contract. Grayson spat, trying to regain his authority. You were a vessel. You were paid $50,000. You signed away your rights. I signed a contract for a living child, Sarah screamed. The sound echoed off the walls, raw, primal. 2 years of grief condensed into one word. Not for a lie. And that money, it wasn't enough. My sister is dying, 23 years old and dying because I trusted you. Dante stood up, moving around the desk like a predator circling prey. You're right about one thing, Ashford. You did clean it up, but you missed the spot. He grabbed Grayson by the lapels of his expensive coat and slammed him against the bookshelves. Books tumbled to the floor. The sound was like bones breaking. Who else knows? Dante snarled. Nobody. It was just me and Catherine. Dante pressed the barrel of the gun under Grayson's chin. Don't lie to me. I'm not. Catherine didn't have access to the kind of money it takes to falsify international birth records and silence a Swiss clinic staff. Dante's voice was ice and razors. That costs millions. Catherine had an allowance. A generous one, yes, but not millions. So who paid the real bills? Ashford. Grayson's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. He was trembling violently. I can't. He'll kill me. I am currently holding a gun to your head, Dante pointed out. His finger moved to the trigger. I'd worry about me. Grayson squeezed his eyes shut. Tears leaked out, tracking down his face. Pathetic, broken. It wasn't Catherine who paid the cleanup fee, he gasped. It was your uncle. Dante froze. The gun didn't move, but everything else about him went completely still. Enzo Moretti, Grayson choked out. He found out about the surrogacy after Catherine died. He came to me in Geneva. He paid for everything. The falsified death certificate for the surrogate's baby, the sealed clinic records, the bribed officials. He told me to give you the child and never speak of it again. Dante released Grayson, stepped back like he'd been burned. Why would Enzo want me to raise a child that wasn't Catherine's? Because of the trust. Grayson coughed, straightening his coat with shaking hands. Your father's will. You only inherit full control of the Moretti trust. The shipping lines, the legitimate businesses, if you have a biological heir by the age of 35. Without Arya, the control reverts to the next in line. To Enzo, Sarah realized. Her voice was hollow. Exactly, Grayson said. He looked at Sarah with something almost like pity. He didn't do it for you, Dante. He did it so you would be distracted, playing father to a miracle baby while he skimmed millions off the top of the shipping business. And if he ever needed to remove you, he could just reveal the truth, that your heir is illegitimate, that she's the daughter of a surrogate. You'd lose everything. The room fell silent, except for the sound of rain against the windows. The betrayal was absolute. Dante had been raising his daughter as a princess, unaware she was actually a pawn in a game of chess. He didn't know he was playing. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her. Green eyes wide with horror. Hands still clutching the rabbit like it was the only real thing in the world. He knows who you are, Dante said quietly. If Enzo knows the truth, he knows you're the loose end. What does that mean? Sarah asked. But she already knew. She could see it in Dante's face. It means as long as Enzo Moretti is breathing, you are a target. Dante nodded to the door. James entered, followed by 2 other guards. Silent, efficient, men who'd done this before. Take the doctor to the boat, Dante ordered. His voice was empty, mechanical. Go deep, past the continental shelf. Dante, no! Grayson screamed as the guards grabbed him. I can help you. I have the files, I have evidence. Dante, please. His screams were cut off as the heavy oak doors slammed shut. Dante stood alone in the center of the room, the weight of his empire pressing down on him like a physical thing. He turned to Sarah. She was shaking. Her eyes were wide with the horror of what she just witnessed, what she just ordered by walking through that door. You just killed him, she whispered. I protected my family, Dante corrected. He walked toward her. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a strange vibrating tension between them. Electric, dangerous. And whether you like it or not, Serafina, that now includes you. Dawn broke cold and grey over the Atlantic. Sarah woke in the guest room. The door was unlocked this time. Not a prisoner, but not free either. Something in between, something undefined. She slipped out of bed, still wearing the oversized silk shirt Dante had given her the night before. His shirt. It smelled like expensive cologne and gun oil. She should have hated it. Instead, it made her feel safe, in a way she didn't want to examine too closely. She walked down the marble hallway, her bare feet silent, following the sound of voices, soft, gentle, completely at odds with the violence of the previous night. The nursery was painted in soft clouds, cream and powder blue, more toys than a department store. A rocking chair by the window, and in the center of the room, on a plush rug, sat Dante Moretti. He looked completely out of place. A man built for violence and power sitting cross-legged on the floor in wrinkled dress pants and an unbuttoned white shirt, building a tower of blocks with his daughter. Arya was sitting opposite him, clapping her hands. Up, up, she chirped. Her voice was bright, happy, nothing like the desperate screaming of the night before. Dante placed another block. The tower wobbled. Careful, tesoro, he murmured. Mama, Arya asked, looking toward the door. Dante turned. When he saw Sarah standing there, the hard lines of his face softened momentarily. Just for a second. Then, the mask was back. He stood up, brushing invisible dust from his pants. She slept through the night, first time in months. Sarah walked into the room. She didn't look at Dante. She only had eyes for Arya, the little girl who was hers, whose existence she'd mourned for 2 years. She sat down on the rug. Arya immediately crawled into her lap, burying her face in Sarah's chest. I missed 2 years, Sarah whispered. Her voice broke. I missed her first steps, her first tooth. 2 years of her life. You won't miss anything else, Dante said. He walked to the window, looking out at the grounds where armed guards now patrolled with German shepherds. The security had tripled overnight because everything had changed. So what happens now? Sarah asked, looking up at him. Do I get a paycheck? Am I the nanny? You can't be the nanny, Dante said. His voice was grim. Enzo knows you exist. He likely knows Grayson is missing by now. If he connects the dots, if he realizes, I found the surrogate, he will come for you. If you leave this house, you will be dead within an hour. So I'm a prisoner, Sarah said. Her voice rose. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be part of your mafia wars. I just wanted to save my sister. And you will, Dante said. He pulled out his phone, sent a quick text. I'm having my people expedite Ivy's surgery. She'll be at Mount Sinai by tomorrow. The best cardiac team in the country. Everything paid for. She'll be healthy, Serafina. You have my word. Sarah felt tears burn her eyes. Why? Why would you do that? Because you're Arya's mother. And because I understand what it's like to love someone so much you'd sacrifice everything. And what about me? Sarah asked. What happens to me? There is only one way to keep you safe, Dante said. He walked over to a small safe in the wall, punched in a code, pulled out a black velvet box. He turned to Sarah. One way to make sure Enzo cannot touch you without declaring open war on the entire commission. He tossed the box to her. Sarah caught it, opened it. Inside sat a ring. Massive emerald-cut diamonds surrounded by sapphires. Old, heavy. The kind of ring that had history, weight, meaning. What is this? She asked, but she already knew. My grandmother's ring, Dante said. You and I are getting married. Sarah laughed, a harsh hysterical sound. You're joking. I met you yesterday. You kidnapped me. I am saving your life. Dante stepped closer. His presence was overwhelming. He smelled like coffee and the ocean. Think, Serafina. If you are just the surrogate, you are a liability. A loose end to be cut. But if you are my wife, if you are Mrs. Dante Moretti, then you are untouchable. Attacking a Don's wife is a violation of the old codes. Even Enzo wouldn't dare strike you directly. And what about us? Sarah gestured between them. We don't know each other. You scare me. Fear is good, Dante said. His eyes were intense, burning. Fear keeps you alive. We don't need to love each other, Serafina. We just need to convince the world that we do. We need to sell the story that we met, fell in love, and that I am protecting my daughter's biological mother. We will figure out the lie, the cover story. Make it believable. And if I say no, then I give you a check for $5 million. I put you and Ivy on a plane to a non-extradition country, and you never see Arya again. The threat hung in the air. It wasn't malicious, it was a statement of fact. Dante couldn't let Sarah take Arya. And Sarah knew with a sinking heart that she could never leave her child again. She looked down at Arya. The little girl was chewing on a wooden block, oblivious to the fact that her mother was bartering her soul. I have conditions, Sarah said. Her voice was trembling but firm. Dante raised an eyebrow. Oh, I'm not just a prop. I raise her my way. No more bodyguards in the nursery. No more guns around the baby. And I want access to the outside world. I won't be a bird in a cage. Negotiable, Dante said. Anything else? Sarah stood up, holding Arya on her hip. She walked up to Dante until they were inches apart. She was small, barely came up to his shoulder. But she looked him dead in the eye. You sleep in your room, I sleep in mine. This is a business arrangement, nothing more. Dante looked at her mouth, then her eyes. A flicker of heat passed through him. Something he hadn't felt in years. Desire mixed with admiration. She was brave, stubborn. Most people cowered before him. She was negotiating. Agreed, Dante said. It was a lie. He knew it. She probably knew it too. But they both needed the fiction for now. Put the ring on, he commanded. Sarah hesitated. Then she slid the heavy, cold metal onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Good, Dante said. He checked his watch. Rolex. Probably worth more than Sarah had made in her entire life. My lawyer will be here in an hour to handle the legal paperwork. We'll sign the marriage documents today. Today? Sarah's eyes widened. Enzo already knows something is wrong. We don't have time to waste. Dante's voice was firm, final. You need legal protection now, not tomorrow, now. Sarah felt the walls closing in. 24 hours ago, she'd been a waitress. Now she was about to become a mafia wife, legally bound to a man who terrified and fascinated her in equal measure. One more thing, Dante said. He stepped even closer. His hand came up to cup her face. Gentle, surprisingly tender. When we're in public, you need to look at me like you love me. Can you do that? Sarah's breath caught. This close, she could see flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell cedar and danger and something intoxicating she couldn't name. I can act, she whispered. Good, Dante murmured. His thumb traced her cheekbone. So can I. Then he stepped back. The moment shattered. He was all business again. Get some rest. We have a lunch appointment in 3 hours. With who? With Uncle Enzo. Dante smiled. It was a shark's smile, sharp and cold and promising violence. It's time he met his new niece. 2 hours later, Sarah stood in front of a full-length mirror in the guest room. A team of stylists had transformed her. Hair blown out in soft waves, makeup subtle but flawless, making her green eyes luminous. The cream silk dress fit her perfectly elegant and expensive. The emerald ring caught every light impossible to miss. She looked like she belonged in Dante's world. She felt like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. There was a knock. Dante entered without waiting. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a rent for a year. His hair was perfectly styled. The scar through his eyebrow made him look dangerous, powerful. He stopped when he saw her, really looked at her. For a long moment, he just stared. You're beautiful, he said finally. It wasn't a compliment. It was a statement of fact. Sarah's cheeks flushed. Thank you. Dante walked over to her. From his pocket, he pulled out a small stack of documents. Sign these. Sarah looked down. Marriage license, legal documents, her name and his, bound together on paper. This is real, she whispered. This is survival, Dante corrected. Sign. Sarah took the pen. Her hand trembled, but she signed. Serafina Moretti. The name looked foreign. Impossible. Dante signed next to her name. His signature was bold, decisive, final. As of this moment, he said, "You are legally my wife. Arya is legally our daughter. Everything I have, you have. Everything I protect for you." He offered her his arm. "Ready, Moretti." Sarah took his arm. The muscle beneath was solid, strong, real. "No," she said honestly. "But let's go anyway." They walked down the stairs. The lawyer was already gone. The paperwork filed. James waited by the door with the motorcade. But as they stepped outside, a delivery van screeched to a halt at the gate. A courier jumped out holding a long rectangular box. "Delivery for Mr. Moretti." James intercepted it immediately, scanned it with detection equipment. His face went pale. "Boss, you need to see this." Dante took the box, opened it slowly. Inside were 12 dead roses, their heads snapped off, stems broken, and nestled among them was a child's velvet rabbit, identical to Arya's. But this one was soaked in red paint, fresh, wet. A card lay on top. Dante read it. His jaw clenched so tight, Sarah could hear his teeth grind. He handed it to her. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned, cursive. "She looks just like her mother. Let's hope she has better luck." Sarah's blood turned to ice. "He knows. Enzo knows I'm here. He's known since last night," Dante said. His voice was deadly calm. The kind of calm that comes before an explosion. "This is his opening move. He's telling us he can reach us whenever he wants." He looked at James. "Triple the guards. No one in or out without my personal authorization. And get Rosa to take Arya to the panic room. Now. Boss, now." James ran back into the house. Dante turned to Sarah. His eyes were blazing. "Change of plans. We're not going to lunch. What are we doing? We're going to war." The motorcade raced toward neutral territory. Connecticut, a private estate owned by the Commission. Neutral ground, where disputes were settled without bloodshed. Sarah sat in the back of the bulletproof SUV trying to process everything. 24 hours ago, she'd been worried about tip money. Now she was racing toward a confrontation with a mafia boss who wanted her dead. "What's the plan?" she asked. "There is no plan," Dante said. His jaw was tight. "Enzo has made his move. He's threatening you, threatening Arya. The only way to stop him is to face him directly. On neutral ground in front of witnesses, he can't kill us without violating every code the Commission holds sacred. And after, when we leave neutral ground, then we're fair game," Dante said grimly. "Which is why we're not leaving until this is settled." The estate appeared through the trees. A massive Victorian mansion. Guards everywhere. Men in suits with suspicious bulges under their jackets. The Commission was here. All 5 dons. The ruling council of the New York underworld. Dante helped Sarah out of the car. His hand was warm, steady, protective. "Remember," he whispered in her ear, "you're my wife. You're Arya's mother. You belong here. Act like it." They walked up the stone steps, through the massive oak doors, into a dining room that looked like it belonged in a castle. And there, sitting at the head of the table, like he owned the place, was Enzo Moretti. He was 62, but looked 50. Tanned, silver hair perfectly styled, wearing a suit that screamed wealth. He smiled when he saw them, warm, grandfatherly, the smile of a man who'd never hurt anyone in his life. It was the most terrifying thing Sarah had ever seen. "Dante," Enzo said, standing. He spread his arms wide. "And this must be the lovely Serafina. I have heard so much about you." He walked toward them, every step deliberate, predatory, beneath the civilized veneer. "Welcome to the family, my dear." He took Sarah's hand, kissed it. His lips were cold. Sarah forced herself not to flinch. "Thank you, Uncle Enzo." "Uncle Enzo," he repeated, tasting the words. "How formal. Please call me Enzo. After all, we're family now." His eyes dropped to her ring. The emerald caught the light. "Grandmother's ring. How sentimental, Dante. I didn't know you had it in you." "There's a lot you don't know about me," Dante said. His voice was ice. Clearly, Enzo gestured to the table where the other dons sat, watching, judging. Please sit, we have much to discuss. They sat, Sarah between Dante and the wall, strategic positioning. She could feel Dante's thigh pressed against hers under the table, solid, real, anchoring. So Enzo said, pouring himself a glass of wine, Tell me, Serafina, how did you and my nephew meet? It's all so sudden, so romantic. This was the test. The lie had to be perfect. Sarah took a breath, channeled every ounce of courage she had. We met at my father's grave, she said. Her voice was steady, clear. 3 months ago, I was visiting and Dante was there visiting his wife. We started talking about grief, about how love doesn't die just because someone does. It was a beautiful lie, plausible, touching. The other dons nodded sympathetically, but Enzo's eyes narrowed, just slightly. 3 months, he said, and you're already married, already living in his home, already acting as Arya's mother. My, how time flies. When you know, Sarah said. She reached over and took Dante's hand. The ring caught the light again. I've never believed in love at first sight, but Dante makes me believe in second chances. Dante squeezed her hand. His eyes met hers. For a moment, she almost believed her own lie. And Arya? Enzo asked. His voice was silk over steel. That child has never spoken a word, never connected with anyone. Yet the servants tell me she calls you Mama. Strange, isn't it? Almost like she knows you from somewhere. The trap was closing. Sarah felt her heart pounding, but she kept her face calm, serene. Children sense things adults miss, she said. Arya and I connected immediately. Maybe because I understand what it's like to lose a mother. I lost mine when I was young. Maybe she sensed that shared grief. Or maybe, Enzo said, leaning forward, there's another explanation. The room went silent. Dante's hand moved under the table, toward his gun. But before anyone could move, the door burst open. James stood there, blood on his shirt, eyes wide with panic. Boss, he gasped. The estate, they breached the perimeter. The panic room. He couldn't finish. Dante was on his feet instantly. Where's Arya? Gone. They took her. Rosa is unconscious. There's a note. James handed over a piece of paper. Dante read it. His face went white. He handed it to Sarah. Your empire or her life. The old lighthouse. 2 hours. Come alone. Sarah felt the world tilt. Her daughter. Her baby. Taken. She looked at Enzo. He was still sitting. Still smiling. But there was something in his eyes now. Satisfaction. Triumph. Terrible news, Enzo said. His voice dripped with false sympathy. I do hope you find her nephew. Losing a child is every parent's worst nightmare. Dante didn't respond. He grabbed Sarah's hand and pulled her toward the door. They had 2 hours to save Arya's life, and Enzo Moretti had just declared war. The drive back to the estate took 12 minutes. It felt like hours. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Arya's face. Those brown eyes. The way she'd whispered, Mama, the night before. We'll get her back, Dante said. His voice was hard, determined. I promise you, Serafina, we will get her back. How? Sarah's voice cracked. He has her. He's going to kill her. No. Dante's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. He needs leverage. He needs me to choose. My empire or my daughter. As long as she's alive, he has power. The moment he kills her, he loses everything. They screeched into the estate's driveway. Guards were everywhere, some wounded, some on phones, all of them looking guilty, ashamed. They'd failed to protect their Don's daughter. Dante was out of the car before it stopped. Sarah followed her heels, sinking into the gravel. Inside the house was chaos. Rosa the nanny sat on the couch with an ice pack pressed to her head. Tears streamed down her face. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. They came in through the ventilation system. Bypassed every alarm. There were 3 of them. They had tranquilizer guns. I tried to fight, but It's not your fault, Dante said. But his voice was distant. Already planning, he walked to his study. Sarah followed. The war room that had been a study transformed before her eyes. James and Marco spread blueprints across the desk. Satellite images of the old lighthouse 30 miles north. The same lighthouse where Dante had proposed meeting Enzo for lunch before the dead roses changed everything. North entrance is exposed, James said, pointing with a red marker. Sniper positions here and here. South side has a service door, but it's lightly rigged. Best approach is from the water. Small boats. We can scale the cliffs and come up behind them. How many men does Enzo have? Dante asked. 20 minimum, maybe 30. And boss? James hesitated. Vincent Castellano is with him. Sarah's blood went cold. Who's Vincent? Catherine's younger brother, Dante said. His voice was flat. He's hated me since the wedding, blamed me for her death during childbirth. If he's with Enzo, this isn't just about money anymore. It's personal. Good, Sarah said. Everyone turned to look at her. She was still in her cream silk dress, hair perfect, makeup flawless, but her eyes were hard as stone. Personal means emotional, she said. Emotional means mistakes. We can use that. Marco, a soldier with a scar from ear to jaw, almost smiled. The wife has teeth. We have 90 minutes, James said, checking his watch. Enzo said 2 hours. We need to assume the place is wired. Cameras. Maybe explosives. He'll see us coming. Then we don't hide, Sarah said. She walked to the table, studied the blueprints. Enzo wants Dante alone. Wants him vulnerable. Wants to prove he's the one in control. She looked up at Dante. So you give him what he wants. You go to the front door, alone, unarmed. Make him think he's won. That's suicide, James said flatly. No, Sarah corrected. It's bait. While Enzo is focused on Dante, the rest of you come from the water. James was right about that approach, but you're not there to fight. You're there to extract Arya. That's the only mission that matters. Get her out. Get her safe. Everything else is secondary. The men looked at each other, then at Dante. Dante was staring at Sarah like he'd never really seen her before. This woman he'd known for 36 hours. This woman who'd gone from waitress to wife to warrior in less than 2 days. What about you? He asked quietly. I'm going with you, Sarah said. Her voice was steel. Enzo sent that box to me. Those dead roses. That rabbit. He knows I'm Arya's mother. He'll want to see me beg. Let him. While he's enjoying his victory, your men get our daughter out. He could kill you both, Marco said. He won't, Sarah said. Not immediately. Men like Enzo don't just want to win. They want their enemy to know they've lost. They want to savor it. That takes time. That gives us an opening. Dante was quiet for a long moment, calculating, weighing odds, lives against lives. Then he nodded. Marco, take 15 men. Approach from the water. Silent approach. No engagement unless absolutely necessary. When you hear 3 gunshots, you move. Get Arya to the safe house in Connecticut. Don't stop. Don't look back. And if you're not behind us, Marco asked. His voice was careful, respectful. Then you raise her, Dante said. You make sure she knows we loved her. You make sure she knows her mother died trying to save her. The room fell silent, heavy. Sarah felt tears burn her eyes, but she blinked them back. No time for tears. Tears were for after, if there was an after. Let's move, Dante said. The lighthouse rose from the cliff like a broken finger pointing at God. Sarah and Dante stood at the front entrance. The rain had started again. Cold October rain, the kind that felt like punishment. Dante wore all black, no weapons. Just as Enzo had demanded. Sarah still wore her cream dress. It was dirty now, torn at the hem, but she wore it like armor. Last chance to stay in the car, Dante said quietly. No. Serafina. She's my daughter, Sarah said. Her voice was fierce. I lost her once. I thought she was dead for 2 years. I'm not losing her again. If I die today, I die fighting for her. That's enough. Dante looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in 2 years, he felt something crack inside his chest. Something that had been frozen since Catherine died, since Arya stopped speaking, since he'd convinced himself he was made of ice and violence and nothing else. "If we survive this," he said, "remind me to fall in love with you." "We're already married," Sarah pointed out. "I mean really fall in love. Not the legal kind, the kind that matters." "Deal." They walked through the door, into this darkness. The stairs spiraled upward into shadow. Emergency lights flickered, casting strobing shadows on the rusted walls. Their footsteps echoed, loud, inevitable. At the top was a widow's walk, the circular platform that wrapped around the lighthouse 50 feet above the churning ocean. And there, standing in the rain with an umbrella like he was at a garden party, was Enzo Moretti. Behind him stood Vincent Castellano, 35, handsome in a cold way. He held a gun loosely in one hand, and between them, sitting in a chair, far too close to the railing, was Arya. She was wearing her nightgown, soaked through from the rain, her golden curls plastered to her face, her eyes red from crying. When she saw Sarah, her face crumpled. "Mama!" she screamed. She tried to stand, but zip ties bound her tiny wrists to the chair. Sarah started forward. Instinct, primal need. Vincent raised his gun, pointed it at Arya's head. "Stop!" Sarah stopped, every muscle in her body screaming to move, to fight, to save her baby. But she couldn't. Not yet. "Dante," Enzo said warmly, like they were meeting for drinks. "And Serafina, how punctual. I appreciate punctuality in business dealings." "Let her go, Enzo," Dante said. His voice was calm, too calm. "This is between us. The child has nothing to do with this." "The child has everything to do with this," Enzo corrected. He walked closer to Arya, ran his fingers through her wet curls. The little girl flinched. "This beautiful little bastard is the key to everything. Your father's will was very specific, wasn't it? Biological heir by age 35. You made it, barely, thanks to me." "Thanks to you," Dante repeated. "You paid Grayson. You covered up the truth. You made sure I had an heir, so you could use her against me later." "Exactly," Enzo smiled. "I needed you distracted, playing father, getting soft while I built my own empire inside yours. $30 million, Dante. Maybe 40. All skimmed from your accounts while you were busy hiring nannies and child psychologists. And when you were ready," Sarah said, her voice shaking with rage, "you would reveal that Arya isn't Catherine's, that she's the daughter of a surrogate, that Dante's heir is illegitimate." "Precisely." Enzo looked at her with something like admiration. "You're smarter than you look, my dear. Yes, I would have destroyed Dante's claim to the family trust. The commission would have stripped him of everything, and it all would have fallen to me, the patient uncle, the faithful brother." He pulled out a gun, small, silver, expensive. He pressed the barrel against Arya's temple. The little girl started to cry, not screaming, just quiet, broken sobs. "Mama, want Mama." Sarah felt something inside her shatter and reform into something harder, something capable of terrible violence. "Here's how this works," Enzo said. His voice was conversational, pleasant. "You have a choice, Dante. Jump off this lighthouse, die, and I'll let Arya live. I'll even let Serafina take her and disappear. You become a tragic suicide. I take control with a heavy heart. Everyone gets what they want. Or," Dante asked, "or you refuse, and I drop her off this cliff. Then I kill you both anyway, but at least you get to watch her fall first." His finger tightened on the trigger. "Choose. Your life or hers." Dante didn't hesitate. He walked to the railing, looked down at the 50-foot drop, the rocks, the churning water. "No!" Sarah screamed. "Dante, don't." "Let her go," Dante said. He climbed up onto the railing, balanced there like he'd done it 1,000 times. The wind whipped his hair. The rain made the metal slick. One wrong move and he'd fall anyway. Enzo smiled, triumphant. "A noble end." "Will you?" Dante asked. His voice was steady, empty. "Let them go." "You have my word," Enzo said. He was lying. They all knew it. "Done," Dante said. and he stepped off the railing, but he didn't jump. He dropped to his knees on the platform. His hand shot out, grabbed something from the ground, a piece of metal rebar, rusted, sharp. In the same motion, he drove it upward into Vincent's leg. Vincent screamed. The gun went off wildly. The bullet hit the lighthouse wall. Enzo turned, shocked. He'd expected Dante to jump, to die, to be noble. He'd forgotten that Dante Moretti was a survivor first. Noble never, but Enzo still had his gun, still had it pressed against Aria's head. Clever, Enzo said. Blood dripped from his mouth. He was smiling, but not clever enough. He moved his finger to the trigger, and Sarah moved. She'd been inching forward the whole time, slow, imperceptible, while Enzo was focused on Dante. Now she lunged. Her shoulder hit Enzo's gun arm. The weapon flew from his hand, skittering across the wet platform. Enzo stumbled, grabbed the chair for balance, the chair with Aria in it. It tipped. Aria screamed, and the chair with Aria still zip-tied to it went over the edge. No! Vincent screamed. Even he hadn't wanted this, hadn't signed up for killing a child. But Sarah was already moving. She didn't think, didn't plan, didn't calculate odds. She threw herself across the platform. Her body slammed into the railing. Her ribs screamed. Something cracked. But she jammed her arm through the gap between the bars, reaching down into the void. Aria was falling. The chair had broken away from the zip ties. The little girl was tumbling through the air, her nightgown billowing like wings, her eyes wide, terrified. Sarah's hand shot out. Her fingers closed around Aria's ankle. The weight nearly tore Sarah's arm from the socket. She screamed. The pain was blinding, white hot, but she held on. She was dangling halfway off the platform now, 50 feet of nothing below her, the ocean churning against the rocks, Aria's weight dragging her down, the rain making everything slippery. "I've got you!" Sarah gasped. Blood filled her mouth. She'd bitten through her tongue. "Mama's got you, baby. Hold on." Aria looked up at her, those brown eyes, so wide, so trusting. "Mama," she whimpered. Enzo looked down at them, at Sarah hanging by one arm, at the child dangling over the abyss. He picked up his gun from where it had fallen, aimed it at Sarah's head. "Persistent," he said. "I'll give you that." The gunshot echoed across the water, but it didn't come from Enzo's gun. Enzo's head snapped back, a red mist in the rain. He stumbled, looked down at his chest, at the hole that had appeared there, right over his heart. He turned. Dante stood behind him, holding Vincent's gun, the one Vincent had dropped when Dante stabbed him with the rebar. "You talk too much," Dante said quietly. Enzo opened his mouth. Blood bubbled out. He reached for Dante, like he wanted to say something, something important. Then he toppled backward, over the railing, into the darkness. They didn't hear him hit the water. Vincent stood frozen, hands up, surrendering. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he'd actually hurt her. That wasn't the plan. I just wanted." "Shut up," Dante said. He tossed the gun aside, then he ran to the railing. He grabbed Sarah's free arm. His hands locked around her wrist like iron. "I've got you," he said. "Pull. On 3. 1, 2, 3. He hauled upward with strength born of desperation. Sarah came up and over the railing, and Aria with her. They collapsed on the platform, a tangle of limbs and rain and tears. Dante wrapped his arms around both of them, held them so tight it hurt, but none of them cared. Aria was sobbing. Sarah was sobbing. Even Dante's eyes were wet, though he'd deny it later. "Family," Aria whispered. Her small hands touched Dante's face, then Sarah's, back and forth. "Mama, Daddy, family." Boots pounded on the stairs. Marco and his team appeared, guns drawn, ready for war, but the war was over. Enzo Moretti was dead. Vincent Castellano was surrendering, and the Moretti family was alive, broken, battered, but alive. 3 days later, the commission met in the same Victorian mansion, neutral ground, all 5 dons present. Dante sat at one end of the table, Sera beside him, her arm in a sling, dislocated shoulder, 3 cracked ribs, but alive. Don Carmine, the eldest of the commission, spoke first. We've heard the accounts. Enzo Moretti attacked his own nephew, attempted to murder Dante's legitimate heir, violated every code behold sacred. He looked at Dante. The commission finds Enzo guilty of treason. His death was justified. His assets are forfeit to you, Dante. The Moretti empire is yours, undisputed. Relief flooded through Sera. It was over, really over. However, Don Carmine continued, there is the matter of the child, Aria. We've reviewed the Genesis life documents, the surrogacy contract, the DNA evidence. Sera's stomach dropped. No, please no. The commission recognizes that Aria Moretti is the biological daughter of Dante Moretti and Serafina Moretti. The circumstances of her birth, while irregular, do not invalidate her legitimacy. She is a Moretti. She is the heir. Sera felt tears of relief stream down her face. Furthermore, Don Carmine said, looking at Sera, the commission recognizes your marriage to Dante Moretti. You are me, Moretti, under our protection. Any man who touches you answers to all of us. It was a promise, a threat, a shield. They were safe. The meeting adjourned. Dante and Sera walked out into the autumn sunlight. Vincent Castellano was being loaded into a car, heading to exile in Sicily. He'd live, but he'd never set foot in America again. He looked at Sera as he passed. I'm sorry. For what it's worth, Catherine would have liked you. Sera didn't respond. Couldn't. Too much had happened. Too much blood. Too much pain. Dante's hand found hers, squeezed gently. They went home. 6 months later, the gardens at the Moretti estate had been transformed. What was once cold marble and imposing gates was now warm and alive. Flowers everywhere. String lights hanging from trees. Music drifting on the breeze. The vow renewal ceremony was small. 40 people. Just family and trusted friends. 6 months ago, Dante and Sera had signed papers in a study with only a lawyer as witness. It had been about survival, legal protection, a shield against the Enzo's threat. This was different. This was about choice. Sera stood in a small dressing room, looking at herself in the mirror. She wore white, simple, elegant, a dress she'd chosen herself, not because someone told her to. Not because she needed to look like she belonged. Because she did belong. Finally, there was a knock. The door opened. Ivy stood there, 24 years old, healthy, gloriously, miraculously healthy. The heart transplant had happened 3 months after that terrible night at the lighthouse. Dante had paid for everything. The best cardiac team in the country. The best aftercare. He'd even paid for Ivy's final year of college. You saved my life, Sera had said when she tried to thank him. You saved mine, Dante had replied. We're even. Now Ivy wore a pale blue dress. Bridesmaid, sister, survivor. You look beautiful, Ivy said, tears in her eyes. Don't, Sera warned. If you cry, I'll cry and my makeup will run. Too late, Ivy laughed through her tears. She hugged Sera carefully, mindful of the shoulder that still ached on cold days. Are you ready? Ivy asked. Yes, Sera said, and she meant it. The ceremony took place in the garden, chairs arranged in semicircles, an archway of flowers at the front. Dante stood there, waiting. He wore a dark suit, simple, perfect. His eyes never left the path where Sera would appear. Music started, soft, instrumental. Arya appeared first, flower girl, 2.5 years old. She took her job very seriously, walking slowly, dropping petals one at a time. Counting under her breath, she wore a white dress with a pink sash. Her golden curls were wild, her brown eyes bright. 1, 2, 3, she whispered. Drop, step. 4, 5, 6. Drop, step. The guests smiled, melted. When she reached the front, she looked at Dante seriously. I did good, Daddy. Perfect Principessa, Dante said. His voice was thick. Then Sera appeared. Dante forgot to breathe. She walked alone. No father to give her away. She'd never had one, but she didn't need one. She'd fought her own battles, survived her own wars, saved her own life and the lives of everyone she loved. She walked to Dante and took his hands. The priest began, but neither of them really heard the words. They were too busy looking at each other. When it came time for vows, the priest nodded to Dante. Dante took a breath. 6 months ago, I forced you to marry me. For protection, for Arya, for survival. I didn't ask if you wanted to. I didn't give you a choice. He squeezed her hands. But today I'm asking, Serafina Bancroft, will you choose me? Not because you have to, not because of Arya, not because of the danger or the money or the protection, but because you want to, because you choose me. Sarah felt tears slip down her face. I choose you today, tomorrow, always. I thought I lost my heart when Catherine died. Dante continued. I thought I had nothing left to give, but you taught me I was wrong. You taught me that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to stand beside someone, even when the world is burning. You saved my daughter. You saved me. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you. Sarah's turn. Her voice was strong, clear. I lost a child and found her again. I lost myself and found something better. I found a family I never knew I needed. You're not an easy man to love, Dante Moretti. You're dangerous and stubborn, and you make terrible decisions when you panic. The guests laughed softly. But you're worth it, Sarah continued. You're worth every scar, every sleepless night, every moment of fear. Because when you love completely. And I choose you. Not because I have to, because I want to, because you're mine. And I'm yours, and nothing will ever change that. The priest smiled. By the power vested in me, I reaffirm your union as husband and wife. What was forged in necessity has been transformed by love. You may kiss your bride. Dante pulled Sarah close, kissed her like he'd been waiting his entire life for this moment. Arya jumped up and down. Yay, Daddy, kiss Mommy again. Do it again. The guests erupted in laughter and applause. 2 years later, the kitchen in the Moretti estate smelled like Sunday dinner. Tomato sauce simmering, garlic bread baking, red wine breathing on the counter. Dante stood at the stove stirring pasta. He'd become a good cook. Not great, but good enough that Sarah let him handle Sunday dinners without supervision. Arya sat at the kitchen island, 4.5 years old, drawing with crayons, elaborate pictures of their family, Mama, Daddy, her, and a baby, because Sarah was pregnant, 7 months. A boy this time. They decided to name him Matteo after Dante's grandfather, the good parts of his grandfather. Sarah stood at the window, one hand on her belly, watching the ocean. The same ocean that had almost taken everything from them. Now it was just beautiful. The doorbell rang. Arya jumped down. Aunt Ivy, Aunt Ivy. She ran to the door. Sarah followed slower now. Pregnancy made everything harder. Ivy stood there, 26 now, engaged to a lawyer named David. A good man, someone who made her laugh. The wedding was planned for next spring. How's my favorite nephew? Ivy asked, rubbing Sarah's belly. Kicking, Sarah said. Constantly. He's going to be a soccer player. Or a fighter, Dante said, appearing with a dish towel over his shoulder. With your stubbornness and my temperament, this kid is going to be trouble. Like his sister, Sarah agreed, watching Arya trying to teach David how to properly hold a crayon. They gathered around the table. A mismatched family. A chosen family. The kind you fight for instead of inherit. Marco was there with his wife. James with his daughter. People who'd become family through fire and blood and choice. After dinner, after Ivy and David had left, after Arya had been tucked into bed with 3 stories and 4 songs, Dante and Sarah stood on the terrace. The same terrace where they'd stood 2 years ago, broken, healing, learning to trust. Do you ever regret it? Dante asked quietly. That night at the restaurant, if you could go back, would you take a different table? Sarah thought about it, really thought about it. She thought about the waitress she'd been, lonely, grieving, working 3 jobs, watching her sister die slowly, going through the motions of a half-life. And she looked at the woman she'd become, a mother, a wife, Someone who'd walked through hell and come out stronger. No, she said finally. I wouldn't change a thing because that night I got my daughter back. I found you. I found out who I could be when I stopped being afraid. She looked up at him. What about you? Do you regret kidnapping me? Dante laughed, pulled her close, careful of her belly. Best kidnapping I ever did. Then more seriously. You know what Arya said to me today? What? She said, Daddy, do you remember when I was quiet? I said yes. And she said I was waiting for Mommy. I knew she'd come. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She's too smart. She's your daughter. Our daughter. Our daughter. Dante agreed. Inside Arya slept peacefully. No more nightmares. No more silence. Just dreams of babies and families. And a world where love was stronger than fear. And in Sarah's belly, Mateo kicked. Strong. Healthy. Loved before he was even born. This was family. Not the one Sarah had been born into, not the one Dante had inherited, but the one they'd built, piece by piece, choice by choice, fight by fight. It wasn't perfect. Dante still had nightmares about the lighthouse. Sarah still woke up, panicking, needing to check that Arya was breathing. They still argued about security and freedom and how much to tell Arya about where she came from. But they loved each other, fiercely, completely, the kind of love that catches falling children and faces down monsters and chooses you every single day. Serafina Bancroft had been just a waitress, trying to survive in a city that didn't care if she lived or died. She'd mourned a child for 2 years, carried guilt and grief like stones in her pockets. But the day a silent little girl looked at her and said, Mama, everything changed. She found her daughter, found a man worth fighting for, found herself. They say blood makes you family. But Sarah learned that love does. The kind of love that makes you catch a falling child. The kind that makes you stand between danger and the people you protect. The kind that chooses you every single day. She'd walked into the Gilded Rose as nobody. Invisible. Forgotten. She'd walked out as a mother. A wife. A survivor. And she wouldn't change a single moment. Not the terror, not the pain, not the impossible choices. Because all of it, every single second, had led her here, home.